Thanks for attending this, and I want to thank Felicia for allowing me this time to talk to her Fairfield County community. And I know you all are bombarded by webinars these days, and I hope that you will all learn something from this one today. So we're basically here to help you face the challenges of dealing with and then emerging from the crisis. And at TAB, which is a franchise that I'm part of, we've developed a well-defined methodology to guide you through the crisis, sort of in 4 parts, and help you start to plan for the post-crisis environment. And the format is well worn, you all know it. I'll present for a bit and then we'll have the Q&A in the end. But I would like to see how this works. So the reason I'm doing this is, you know, I'm a business coach, and so I want to help businesses during the global crisis. And as my phone has been telling me, business owners need guidance now more than ever. And small to mid-sized businesses have to succeed if Fairfield County is going to succeed, and if our country is going to succeed. In fact, the whole global economy is going to succeed. So very important that, you know, people get this right as we move forward. Everybody knows how to use the chat. Post your chat in the real time. Felicia said she will help me out and interrupt me if need be, but otherwise read the questions at the end so we can address anything that you have. And I know everybody can do that fairly well at this point. We're all Zoom experts. So a little bit about me. In 2017, I left the financial world and founded Fox Run Advisors Business Coaching, and I own the franchise TAB Fairfield County. And basically what I do is I work with business owners to help them become more profitable and build a trusted team to run the business for them so that they can actually do what they want and live their personal vision. Most can't do that. Unfortunately, with the COVID crisis, that thing has totally been put on its head. And now I'm working on helping people enhance their liquidity, reduce their expenses. I'm having them, you know, access various government funding programs, and I know Jeff does a lot of that, reassess their business models and all this sort of stuff, and in certain cases actually help people find and take advantage of opportunities that this crisis has presented. As I said, I'm in financial services, and I guess my biggest claim to fame was I successfully started a trading desk at Bank of America that grew from scratch to 500 million in revenues. And I had a team at one point of 53 employees in 7 countries. So I've had a lot of experience how to build a team, make sales, and manage risk. And I brought that to Fairfield County business owners, and I've helped a lot of business owners grow with exit strategies, team building, strategic and financial planning. And many of you, at least I know a few, you know my wife Mimi, who I've been married to since '95, and I'm a father of 5, and they're all home, and it's my food bill is crazy, and I'm a voracious reader, squash player, and I like to ski and actually like politics, believe it or not. So enough about me. And so what we're going to try to get to today is really 2 things. There's a crisis leadership model, which sort of frames how people respond, and it's a lot like actually the brief model, which I think a lot of you will know. And then we'll deal with our methodology of how to survive and thrive today and 6 to 12 months from now, and we'll end with the Q&A. So let's jump into the crisis leadership model. And this basically is a model that describes the phases leaders, and in fact, all of us go through when we're hit with an unexpected shock or crisis like this. And the first phase is shock. And because all of us experience tremendous trauma in business and in our personal lives, our business may dry up, demand for our product or service goes away, and all our assumptions about our markets, our income levels, our own personal safety, the safety of our family, go out the window. And during this phase, it's very difficult to act because you're just overwhelmed with all the change in our lives. And as I mentioned before, this model is very similar to what happens when we are grieving over the spouse of or a loss in our lives. I'm not going to go through this, but everybody kind of raise your hand if you have had a loss and kind of are familiar with this grief model. Right. Pretty much everybody. I guess we're all have dealt with that. And so that means that you're probably going to relate in some ways to the feeling you felt when the pandemic shuttered our ability to travel, associate, go to work, disrupted our routines, tremendous sense of loss, and also our incomes were severely affected. So that was kind of the first phase that we went through. And I'm guessing I'm going to ask a second question. How many of you still feel in some ways that you're in that shock phase, or have you moved on from it 8 or 9 weeks in? If you could just raise your hand there too. Yeah, sorta, a little bit, right? So, but most of us have come to grips with at least the new reality and our functioning in this. So what I'm going to focus on in the second part of this is really to say, how do we come to grips with the new reality as quickly as possible in the market today, and what we think our markets for our products are going to look like in 6 months to a year from now. And this is the adapt phase, and the one that most of us, I think, are in now. As I said earlier, some of us have lost our market. I work with a prominent event planner who has lost all her revenue for 2020 after having a very strong 2019. You know, bringing people together is the exact opposite of social distancing. And imagine the shock that she felt as her business basically dried up. Yet, on the other hand, some businesses couldn't be busier. I have a trust and estates lawyer who saw demand for will preparation go through the roof, and he can't be busier. And I guess the point is that everybody has to react to the new reality. And in many cases, you have to reinvent what you do, devise a plan, execute, and then scale or fail. And if you fail, do it quickly enough so that you can try again. And so what I'm going to do now is go talking about the methodology we use in our coaching practice to move the business through this adapt phase to the execution phase as quickly as possible. And we've coined a term for it, and we call it RISE. But before we get there, I am probably, oh boy, I was a couple slides behind. I apologize for that. Did everybody see this slide? Yes? Okay, sorry about that. I'm a little behind. But the first thing we have to do is get our arms around our mindset. So we're not a product of our circumstances, but we're really a product of our decisions that we make from here. Plenty of people have been in far worse circumstances than we and have actually thrived and survived and done very well. So don't believe that, you know, you can't get out of this. It's what we do from now going forward. That being said, we must acknowledge that some people are in different boats in this same storm, and some boats are leaking a lot worse than others. And so the actions that we'll have to take are going to be more radical for some people than it will be for others. And that's just, we have to be very realistic as we look at this situation. So let's go to RISE. So we put our best thinking together and how to approach the crisis, and we have a 4-step approach. Each of these 4 processes will move people quicker to the execution stage of our business, allow us to survive the headwinds and prepare for what's to come. So the first phase of this is reassess. And basically, we revisit the decisions that we made in the beginning during the initial weeks of the crisis. And while many have addressed these areas, taking a step back and, you know, looking at these areas and see if we missed anything, if we want to revisit any of those decisions, is a good idea, because a lot of these were done in haste with not a lot of good information. We're going to take stock of our business, the key elements. What does our supply chain look like? What are our customers doing? How have they changed? What are their needs now? What does our market look like? And what's my revenue going to look like going forward? Think about the worst case scenarios. And we do this introspection, it's really important that we're going to discover some weaknesses, that we're not set up best for the market to come, but we will also have some strengths that we can work off of. So that really provides a base to us. And then the third thing is we strategize. So given what we have, the strengths and weaknesses, how we're positioned, what are we going to do? What are we going to start looking for? What's the future going to bring us? This crisis is going to end. And let's think about what things might look like in 6 months and what products and services can we offer to that new reality? What's going to be different? What's going to be the same? So how will you prepare your business to be as strong a position as possible in the future? And last, we have to take that strategy and we have to execute it. Successful business owners have a lot of great ideas, but they're also great at executing them. But since the market's going to be different than the one that you knew, our focus here is on focus and agility, because some of the things you're going to try are just going to fail. And you're going to have to say, all right, let's reboot, let's go back, let's rethink what we're going to do. So this is something that I'm working on with all my coaching clients. So I don't have time to go through all of these. So I'm going to take a little bit of a deep dive on the first step, which is reassess, so you can understand sort of the rigor of the process. By a show of hands, who made some really difficult decisions in their business in the past 8 or 9 weeks since this started? Right? Do I furlough people? Do I create payroll for them through the PPP? Do I close a location? All sorts of decisions. Do I pay my rent? All these big decisions. Congratulations for making them. You made them with not a lot of information and under oftentimes significant duress. So what we do here is we ask, did I miss anything important? Did I have a chance to maybe take a non-performing employee who was a cancer in the firm, and did I take a chance to lay that person off? Not that I want anybody to be laid off, but that's these are the types of things. Did you refrain from any action because you didn't know how to do it, you weren't comfortable doing it? And did you make some decisions that you'd like to revisit now? So let's look at 3 different fundamental areas of your business, and I'm going to ask you some questions about that. Okay. First is safety. If you run an essential business, you're open, so you probably dealt with creating a safe environment throughout the crisis. And for non-essential businesses like mine, your employees can just start to transition back. This is something that you should work on. So let me ask you, are you up to speed with all the relevant employee labor laws that are in place, and especially the COVID specific labor laws? What happens if an employee gets sick for you? Or what happens if you have a child or parent that gets sick? What are you going to do? Are you going to allow that employee to work? What's going to be your protocols? Do you have a plan to keep your environment safe as possible for employees or customers? How about your employees? Are they trained to respect social distancing? Do they know how important it is? Are they going to wear masks? Are they not? And what changes do you need to make to your employee policies in light of the current crisis? It really doesn't matter how big or small a company you are. These questions have to be asked and answered in order for you to engage with your employees and your customers. So safety is just paramount. Let's revisit those things. Sorry about that. I'm really bad at keeping up with this. So let's talk about your most important asset, which is your employees. So when I often take on a new client, I ask them, what's more important to you, your employees or your customers? There's no real right answer, but I do know that if you have happy employees, you're generally going to have happy customers. So the question is, do you know how your employees are doing emotionally each day. We have, in another part of tab, we have a member that actually has a Skype meeting with all his team every morning to get them on the same page. But the first question is, he asks them to hold up a red, yellow, or green card to say how they're doing. And then the other employees, if somebody has a red card, they actually rally around that person. And look, let's face it, your employees are scared. They don't know what the future holds for them. And so communication becomes very, very important. So what are you telling them? We're not asking you to share really negative or worst case scenarios, but during times like this, if your employees feel you're holding back key information or not leveling with them, it'll undermine their loyalty. Do you think they will think that you genuinely care for them when they look back and are looking out for your best interest during the crisis? Remember, you're trying to keep your most talented people, and if you don't do these things, the job market opens back up. So this might be a time to disclose more rather than less, convey a sense of togetherness, and ask employees for suggestions. The last thing I want to talk about, because it's important, is your cash runway. My background is in bankruptcy, and I'm going to ask a very easy question of everybody. And do you know why most businesses fail? And the answer is, it's really simple, they run out of cash. And so a lot of the business owners that I deal with never have read a cash flow statement. They might know what their P&L looks like, but they don't know what their cash flow looks like. While we don't advocate this, but some of them business owners say, I'm just not good with numbers, or I'm uncomfortable with them during flush times. But if you don't understand your cash and your liquidity runway in a time like this, when revenue could be down 50, 60, 70, 100%, you can lose your business. So the first thing I'm talking to people, let's get a daily cash flow, or at least a 13-week cash flow that's updated weekly. Do you have that cash flow forecast? Have you taken full advantage of all the government relief programs? And that's something that Jeff's very much a specialist in. Have you reviewed all your expenses, removed the non-essentials, and reduced where possible? And lastly, have you explored how your customers can be a source of cash? And this is one that I think is particularly appropriate for this audience, but I used to have a salon as a client, but I keep in touch with her. And I'm sure everybody here, because it's predominantly women, goes to a salon. And obviously her business has zero revenue. And so what she's doing is, how many of you would value the opportunity to go to her or your salon owner during the first week when the economy opens? Would that be of value to you? So raise your hand if it would. So what she did was she went to her clients, her mailing list, and offered a 20% discount if somebody would pay her today for the ability to get in the first 2 weeks when she was able to open. And that cash infusion enabled her to pay her April rent and now her May rent, because she's basically got a stacked book of appointments for the first 2 weeks. So you won't have to show your roots to the rest of the world. So that's her theory, and she got a good amount of money in for that. So what's important to remember here is not really what your P&L is saying, but look at your balance sheet. Things like accounts receivable balances, inventory, lines of credit, things like that. It's the balance sheet where you can find money to sustain yourself. Okay, so I hope I didn't run over, but now it's your turn. Happy to take any questions that you might have, and hope this has been useful. I obviously have other phases that I go into depth on, but I was really only able to cover this one. So Felicia, I'll turn it over to you at this point.
Great. Well, thank you. Do you want to take it off of share screen so
Yes.
we can do a group chat?
Sure.
Great. Yeah. So if anybody has questions, you can be unmuted and we can go through this in more detail. I had one question to start. So right now, like, how does this work? Like, let's say that I decided I wanted to work with you on this process. Do you have like a package for?
Yeah, I'm actually have what's called a Rise execution series, and I guess I blasted out an email and on that last week. But I'm actually giving 4 free webinars starting tomorrow at 8:30 with business owners, and we're going to start on this Reassess thing tomorrow. And it's actually a roundtable. It's a presentation like this, followed by owners bringing up topics that are pertinent to or issues that are pertinent to that topic, and getting feedback from the other business owners in the room. So I'm actually doing that, and I'm certainly coaching all my clients through this as well. So, you know, my contact information, I think, is in the chat. You know, I'm happy to talk to anybody, and I still have maybe 1 or 2 slots for this, because it's a 4-part series. You really should come to all of them if you want to get down the track.
Great. Does anybody else have any questions? You can unmute yourself and ask Peter.
I have a question.
Hi,
So
Jeff.
Peter, this has been very helpful.